Welcome, and we'll start, of course, with our bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
So I want to say a little something about yesterday. And really, so one thing you know is that I'm trying as best as I understand Judaism, not to present it in a sanitized form. That it's so in some ways so easy to just try to look at the bright and the happy sides and the sides that fit in neatly to whatever cultural norms happen to be in place at that time. And I try not to present it in that kind of way, but at the same time, of course, you know that I try to understand it in a way that fits better with my own sense of values, etc., etc. So I admit I massage it, but I hope that at least because my initial desire is to understand it on its own terms, that what I try to do with it after I've tried to understand it on its own terms is a different thing than simply sanitizing it. So I think that part of why we have difficulty with some of the concepts that we come across has more to do with our lack of understanding and not having a sense of the big picture, etc., etc. There's a wonderful statement in Pirkei Avot, and I'm not sure if it's Rabbi Akiva or Hillel. I believe it's one of those two. Say, never say, I will never understand this, because someday you will. So I felt the need to share that with you based on what we studied yesterday. However, what we go on with today is a clearer indication of the kindness that I believe is the underlying theme of this parsha. So give me a moment and I'll see what I can do. Okay. All right, give me a moment. So,
So you are recording?
I am recording.
Okay, I just don't see where it says that.
It should have told you that right at the beginning.
Yeah, I just thought it usually indicates that. It's okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe it is. So, Lo, you shall not. What shall you not? Tir'e et shor achicha, you shall not see the ox of your brother, or et seyo, or his sheep, nidachim, wandering, v'hit alamta, and you ignore mehem, you ignore them. Hit alamta literally would mean you remain silent. But essentially what it's saying is you see these animals, you recognize that these animals belong to someone you know, at least that might be what it means, all right? But your brother, right? That's what I'm trying to riff on, right? And ignore them. Hashev teshivem la'achicha. You shall absolutely, you must return them to your brother. So you'll see it'll go on to something else, but at least basically it's saying it's someone you know, you see their property, you see their livestock wandering around, clearly lost, you have to tell them, you have to return it to them. So again, an essential act of kindness. So Rashi on Vehit Alamta. So literally he translates it as Kovesh ayin, conquer one's eye. In other words, try to pretend you don't see it. Ki'ilu eino ro'ehu, as if he doesn't see it. Lo tir'eh v'hit'alamta, you shall not see it and go ahead and ignore it, right? Lo tir'eh oto, you shall not see this sheep or ox, shetitalem mimenu, in a way that you ignore it, that you pretend you're blind of it. You're blind. Oh, sorry. Italem means to be silent, right? That you should be silent of it. Forgive me. All right. Zehu pshuto. That's the simple meaning of it. Pretend like you didn't see it. Just remain silent. And this is Baba Metzia, page 30. Verabotenu Amru. Okay. And however our rabbis interpret, Pa'amim sha'ata mit alem v'chule. So our sages have said that there may in fact be times when you do remain silent. So that is because of the way that it is written, right? That it uses this term, vihit alamta, right? That it does that. So it's there. The way you can read this sentence, right, is you may see the sheep or the ox of your neighbor wandering, and you may remain silent. There may be times when you do remain silent, okay, or you ignore it. So, what exactly those? Okay, so here we go. Here in this particular, looking at this particular Torah Tamima here, he discusses it here. He says, Tanu Rabbanan, right? Our rabbis have taught, Vehita alamta, and you shall remain silent. Pa'amim she'ata mitalem. There are times, circumstances alter cases, right? There are times when you do remain silent. Upamim she'i'ata mitalem. And there are times when you don't remain silent. Ha-ketzad. What are we talking about? Haya kohen. If this individual was a kohen, vahu bevet hakvarot, right? And this animal, I believe, is what he's talking about, is in a graveyard. Or shayazaken. Or there might be a case where the person is elderly, right? Ve'eno lefik fodo, and it would not be something that he should have to do, given his age and the respect you have to show to someone who's elderly. Or shahaita melacha shelo meruba, or if he was extremely busy, that the work he was taking care of, or the labor he was involved in, was overwhelming, right? Tremendous. Michel Chavero, more involved than his neighbor, right? That what he had to get done was something far more intense than what his neighbor was doing. L'chach ne'emar, and for this reason it states, "V'hit alamta mehem," you shall remain silent from them. Now there's this footnote here and a Torah Tamima comment. I'm not going to do it right now. If I have a chance, I may take a quick look at it and see if it's something I want to share with you at our next lesson. But at least he's giving you some specific examples where this law is ruled by its circumstances. So there we are. Ve'im lo karov achicha elecha, but if your neighbor, your brother literally, is not close to you, velo yedato, or you don't even know who this or ox or sheep belongs to, you don't know. Asafto el toch betecha. You shall gather it into your home. V'haya imcha ad darosh achicha oto, and this animal should be with you until your brother seeks it out, looks for it, because you don't know who this person is, or they're so far away, they're in another country somewhere, right? You know who it belongs to, but you know that they're not around. They're in Australia, okay? Or anywhere really distant, or you don't even know who owns it. But the fact, I mean, we'll finish this sentence up. And you shall return it to him. So this, of course, raises some different things. We're talking about an animal, and an animal consumes food. But again, it's really giving a specific of the way in which we would apply that the question that Cain asked God, am I my brother's keeper? And the answer is, of course, no question about it. We are responsible. We are mutually responsible for one another. So, yeah. Lauren, do you have a question?
No.
Okay, all right. So let's take a look at the Rashi on this. Sorry, just trying to get it. Here we go. Ad darosh achicha, until your brother seeks it out, right? And again, this is this Baba Metzia. This is actually page 27. V'chi ta'ale al dacha, and can you imagine, would you even imagine, sheyitnehu lo kodem sheyidrashehu? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to retranslate this. And should you consider that you should actually give it to him before he asks for it, where he seeks it out, all right? Ella darshehu, but what it's saying is, check him out. Check out this person, Shalo Yehe Ramai, that he not be a cheat. Because of course we know. I remember this sort of joke back in grade school, right? Of the fact, that this person puts an ad in the paper saying, "I have found $1,000 bill. Will the owners please line up to have it returned to them?" Right. So the Torah is considering human nature here, right? In other words, make sure that this is in fact the correct owner. So just a little Rashi there. V'hashevota, you shall return it to him. So why wouldn't we think that, right? Why is the Torah saying this? Shetehe bo hashava, okay, that there should be a return to him, shelo yochal beveitcha, so that he does not. In other words, what it's saying is that if the animal stays in your house, kedei damav, in other words, the amount of food that the animal consumes, the amount of care that you have to provide the animal goes above the value of the animal, right? V'tit ba'em mimenu, and you claim it from him. So the idea of returning the animal here is that the amount of time that the animal, I believe, is staying with you doesn't exceed the cost of the upkeep of the animal, of the animal itself, the value of the animal itself. Mikan amru, from this they derived, kol davar she'osev ochel, that if it is something that actually works, does work and consumes food, ya'aseh v'yochal, that he should in fact use the animal to work, and he should feed the animal, and the animal should eat. So you don't want to be in a situation. The Torah clearly, and the way the rabbis are interpreting this, is clearly trying, at least, and from the little bit that Rashi's sharing with you, are trying to consider all the sides that are involved in this particular mitzvah, and the fact that it isn't just a one-sided affair, but there are implications on both sides. So if in fact it's an ox and you can use the ox to plow and you're feeding the ox, even though it doesn't belong to you, you should have the ox work. And that way you're not going to feed the ox to a point where you've now paid basically for the ox or beyond, right? Look at this. But something that does not in fact perform labor for you, but it consumes food, yim kor, he should sell it. Excuse me 1 second. So again, this is opening up some ideas here of how you try to do something that's beautiful and right and shows mutual concern for people, even strangers. But at the same time, it's not that the Torah is expecting you to make major sacrifices here. So that's when it says you shall return it to him, there are circumstances where you would not be returning it to him. And likewise, you should do lechamoro for his donkey. And likewise, you should do it for his clothing. And likewise, you should do this for any lost object of your brother, asher tovad, which is lost, mimenu, from him, umitzata, and you find it. Lo tuchal lehit alem. You are not able to, right? That's literally what tuchal means. You are not able to be silent. So, of course, what does it mean? You're not able to, lo tuchal lehit alem. Here's the Rashi, lichvosh einecha, right? To pretend you don't see it. Ki'ilu eincha ro'eh oto, as if you are not able to see it. To overrule your eye, to conquer your eye. Let's see if there's any more Rashi in there. There we go. All right. So that's what the Torah has to say about finding lost objects, right? It isn't losers, keepers, losers, weepers, finders, keepers. It's not that at all. But there are circumstances that are obviously involved in this particular issue.
Rabbi?
Yes, Harlan.
Okay. If I find something, whether it's clothing or whatever, and the person comes to me and says that's his, he's got to identify it. I'm not going to give it to him until he really identifies it thoroughly, because he might just walk away and with something precious to somebody else.
Right.
You got to identify the person. What was on the clothes, what and so forth and so on, to make sure that it's the right person you're giving it to.
Well, of course, that is a situation where you don't know whose object it belongs to, right? In a case where you know it's your friend's object, if you know the person and you know that this person, even if you don't know this person personally, but if you recognize that it belongs to that person, then you wouldn't do it, okay? It just depends on the circumstances. So the Torah is basically, and the way the commentary, the rabbinic treatment of this is to try to see how the Torah is actually implying those sorts of things. And the issue of returning lost objects is an important issue, because it's not talking about we want to avoid stealing on our side, but on the other hand, so we want the responsibility, but at the same time, there's a bunch of issues involved in that responsibility. So yes, we dealt with a situation with you don't know who owns this thing. Someone comes and claims it. Then you need to ask him. You need to ask that person about how they identify it, to make sure that they're not cheating you. Rashi actually said to make sure they don't cheat. Right. Let's go on with one more. Lo tir'eh, you should not see et chamor achicha, your brother's donkey, or shoro, or his ox, noflim baderech, falling along the way. In other words, they clearly are maybe overburdened. V'talam tamehem, and again, you shall be silent, right, regarding them. Hakim takim imo, you shall certainly lift up, right, reposition, help, lift up with him. This little imor is actually very important, right? So, hakim takim, you shall certainly make sure that the animal, to help him pick up the animal. Zo te'ina. So what it means is when it says you shall pick up, Baba Metzia, again, obviously Baba Metzia is dealing with this particular issue. Zo te'ina. He says this lifting up stuff is helping him load it. Lahat in masa'o, to lift up, pick up the load, the burden, shenafal me'elav, which fell off of the animal. Okay. So imo, with him. So this is this imor that I was telling you about. Im ba'ala, together with the owner of the animal. Aval im halach v'yashav lo, but if the owner went and sat down, amar lo, and said to the person, said to you, right? Ho'il v'alecha mitzvah, since this is your mitzvah, since you're the one who's commanded to pick up the animal, or pick up the, in this case, it's saying, pick up the burden of the animal. Imratzita liton to, okay. If you want to pick up, if he wants to pick it up, right, pick up the stuff, liton ta'on patur, and if he doesn't want to, in fact, lift up the animal, okay, you don't lift up, sorry, the burden, he doesn't have to, and that's the imor, right? The person who owns the animal can't just say, well, it's your mitzvah, it's not mine, so you go and pick up the burden and reload the animal. I'm just going to sit down and watch you do it. Now, again, there are situations, right? There's situations. Rashi isn't going to into it, but really from what we read before, what happens if the person who's leading this animal is an aged person, right? And just isn't really able to do this kind of stuff? Well, that's a different story. And that might affect the way in which this mitzvah is actually applied. But essentially, it's basically saying that the person, who owns the animal is still responsible. And you are then responsible to help him reload the animal. Lo yiheh chli gever al isha. The clothing of a man should not be on a woman. V'lo yilbash beged simlat isha, nor should a man wear the clothing of a woman. Right? So a woman shouldn't wear a man's clothing, and a man shouldn't wear a woman's clothing. Ki tu'avat Hashem Elokecha, because this is considered something disgusting to God, to the Lord your God. Kol oseh ele, anyone who does this kind of stuff. Now, the Torah is the commentary is going to say that there is something behind this particular statement, okay, and you'll see. I believe Rashi is going to help us understand. So, lo yeh kli gever alisha, a woman should not wear a man's clothing. And by the way, there's of course a lot of other commentary as well. This is in the Sifrei, also in the Talmud, Nazir. Look, either this is, it could be Pei Aleph, that would be 81, etc. Shetahe domeh le'ish. The idea is that she shouldn't look like a man, kedei shetelech ben ha'anashim, so that she can go around men, meaning to be promiscuous. She'ein zo ele l'shem ni'uf, because this is only for the sake of promiscuity. So it's not simply saying, right? It's not saying that a woman isn't allowed to wear pants. It's not saying that. It's saying that there's a purpose behind this, that someone who does this in order to try and act in a promiscuous way, that is the nature of this. V'lo yilbash gever simlat isha, nor should a man wear the dress of a woman, leilech leishev ben anashim, in order to go and sit amongst the women, etc. Davar acher. So there is another interpretation here. Shelo yashir sa'ar ha'erva. What it's saying here is that one should not remove a pubic hair, the pubic hair. V'sha'ar shel beit hashchi, nor it means the hair underneath your armpits. This is referring to a man, shouldn't be doing that. Ki to'avat, so he's going to discuss the term to'eva, right? Lo asra tova. The Torah only forbid this particular practice. Ela lavush hamavi lidei to'eva. It's referring to clothing that is seductive. That's what that the Torah is referring here to, seductive clothing. So look at this. Look at how, we see the written Torah, the way it's written, and here there is an interpretation that certainly modifies looking at this in a purely literal kind of way. And clearly the tradition is trying to understand what is going on here. So I'm going to stop right here. There's a whole new mitzvah that we're going to be reading here. So give me a moment while I mark the page. And here we are. And I want to give you a chance for any reaction that you might have. Any thoughts, any reactions before I stop the recording.
Yeah, I have a thought. If I saw not my neighbor, but a person that I have, thoughts about, I mean, he's my enemy, and I see that he's difficulty. I mean, he's in an accident, he can't get out or something like that of the car. Should I pass over and say, forget it, I'm not going to help him?
Right. What do you think, Harlan? What do you?
Well, I would help him. Even if he's my enemy, I'd get him out of that car. I don't want him to die.
So the Torah actually says it elsewhere, not here, but elsewhere. The Torah mentions that this person might be your enemy, but you still have to help them, and that's why I'm saying that kindness is above all, right? That acting in a kind way, and part of understanding the nature of kindness means not reacting in a retaliatory kind of way. There is such a temptation on the part of people, of all of us, some more so than others, to act in a retaliatory way. And the Torah is very clear about the fact that we should not, it says, right? You shouldn't take revenge and you shouldn't even bear a grudge. And being kind involves not retaliating and doing everything you can not to bear a grudge. And here the Torah is giving, some specific examples of how the only thing that's going to transform this world is kindness. And the more we see what's going on in this world, that is the absence of kindness, it's really sad. It really is sad. So I'm going to stop the recording here.